Hey everybody, so this weekend I decided to go see Alien Romulus, which as far as I know is the full reboot of the Alien franchise again. Actually, edit from Future MB, it's not a full reboot, it is a tastefully done sequel to the first Alien movie, Prometheus, and really loosely Alien Resurrection, which I'll get into later. Okay, back to what I was saying. I don't watch a ton of horror movies, but I make an exception for the Alien series because they consistently do really cool, really unique, and unusually scary shit. Now, I had some big mixed feelings going into this one because previously Ridley Scott had rebooted the franchise as Prometheus for like the past decade, and I've got some really big mixed feelings on the Prometheus series. Like, the series was originally created to tell the origin of the aliens and the space jockeys from the first movies, and I liked what they were doing with Prometheus 1, although there were definitely some sequences that showed Ridley Scott's age as a filmmaker with its weird 1970s retro horror vibe. Now that it's been a few years, I think it's dawned on me that the problem with the two Prometheus movies were that they were both extremely half-baked. What I'm getting at is like, Prometheus 1 had a shit ton of cool ideas. The good half was Ridley Scott's interesting idea to do an Alien prequel that was bigger than an Alien prequel, tackling like what the hell is God and where did humans come from. Unfortunately, the bad half of that was Lost writer Damon Lindelof coming down from his cloud and filling the movie with a lot of his preposterous ideas and so many plot holes and red herrings that the movie almost became a satire of what a prequel is, giving no clear or obvious path for the movie to directly connect to the Alien franchise, and a lot of people just hated that. Now, because people hated that, Ridley Scott was no longer allowed to cook his magic, and we got a worse sequel called Alien Covenant that threw out, honestly, some of the most dramatic twists that could have happened with the Prometheus sequel, and instead just skipped straight ahead to some melodrama about Fassbender's David Android being all into himself, genociding the extremely interesting space jockey species, and then, making out with himself because it was just so half-baked. The bad half, once again, this time was that while there were elements of a Prometheus sequel there, then after that, the movie turned into a carbon copy, cookie remake of the original Alien on speed dial, and that sucked, and that effectively destroyed Scott's chances of wrapping up his Prometheus trilogy with a decent and satisfying ending explaining whatever happened to Fassbender. Now, matters were then made worse when Disney bought out Fox just to get a hold of the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, just to keep the MCU alive, and now here we are, they've rebooted the franchise yet again. Okay, so let me see what this one is. Okay, so Romulus. I went into this one not being thrilled and kind of expecting another half-assed reboot like Covenant, but it immediately captured my attention by presenting itself as not a reboot but a branch root sequel to the first Alien movie, not following Ellen Ripley as the James Cameron Aliens movie did, but instead following up on the ship the Nostromo, the ship Ripley blew up in the first movie, and taking it down a different path. So the movie presents that another Weyland-Yutani ship showed up and went to the wreck site and got the Nostromo's like cargo bay open and collected all the scuzzy alien infected artifacts and took them somewhere to continue the chaos. After that, we meet our main character, who's just some chick, and I never got her name. She has a best friend named Andy, who is an autistic android, and I will call him Andy the autistic android for the rest of this review. They live in a super Blade Runner-y looking space mine, and I really appreciated seeing how Blade Runner-y it was because it kind of got me in this fun headspace, and I think it showed some respect to the filmography of Ridley Scott. Anyway, main character is deep in debt because she's a wage slave miner with no real future, and it's relatable. I instantly like all the main characters in this movie because instead of jaded middle-class space truckers, these are jaded bottom-class student debt holders. Anyway, she teams up with her depressed friends, and they decide that because their life sucks, they want to steal an abandoned spaceship and escape from the Blade Runner hell planet. And they need Andy the autistic android because only he can interface and open up the ship. And their goal is to steal some cryogenic pods off the ship that will allow them to go to another planet. So the team consists of 2 boys, 3 girls, and Andy the autistic android. The movie is extremely bad at conveying anyone's names, so I'm just going to describe people by the way they look until I figure out their names. There's normal boy, headband bad boy, pregnant girl. Pregnant girl's name is actually revealed in the third act to be Kate, bald Asian, and main character. All right, so with this motley crew assembled, the boys go in the ship, and it's super creepy, and there's a really claustrophobic like opening scene as they have to crawl into the ship and get working. Meanwhile, the girls fly around the ship, and it's revealed that the girl with the long hair is pregnant with a baby of unknown origins, And everyone gives Andy a lot of crap because there's android racism present, and he's black, so it's like double racism because why you gotta be that way to the black android? Anyway, so then there's a cool moment when they almost fall into a classic alien acid hole, and they find the cryo fuel room, and they immediately get locked inside with an army of facehuggers who come back to life as they steal all the cryo fuel out, which was keeping them frozen. Also, jerk guy with the headband loses 2 fingers to the cryo fuel. Oh, and they find this android named Rook who seems to be a carbon copy of Bishop from the first movie, and that was fan service and everyone cheered. Anyway, then Andy the android reboots because they put a disc in him from the other android, and suddenly he's cool and British. But in a refreshing change of pace from all the previous evil androids in the franchise, it still seems like he's going to do the right thing and protect his main girl. But no, a few minutes later, he gets his prime directives erased, and he turns into the stereotypical android from every single one of these movies. Super lame cop-out. I hated this. They use it for some drama, but overall, I hate this plot twist. Anyway, then bald Asian girl gets impregnated by the facehugger, and then she and headband asshole and the pregnant girl end up flying away together in the spaceship. The chestburster immediately kills Asian girl, and I was kind of wishing the ship would fly away and like kill all the aliens, but very dumbly it magically flies into the space station's ship dock, completely intact, and meanwhile everyone else on the station still has to deal with the army of facehuggers that they released. Then there's a kind of mega stupid scene where they try to sneak past all the facehuggers with like Jurassic Park. If we're just quiet and careful, they won't see us logic. Back on the ship, meanwhile, pregnant girl is stuck alone with the alien and the headband guy who still hasn't died. They team up and they find that the alien has turned into a big cocoon, and they think that they could totally kill it at this point. And holy shit, they actually try to. The headband guy stabs the alien with like a cattle taser, and unfortunately it just bleeds a bunch of alien blood all over the headband guy, and he dies a really nasty death. Then the alien hatches, and it looks pretty much the same alien as you saw in Alien 1 and Alien 3. Meanwhile, the pregnant lady opens a door and immediately falls to her death, having done nothing except releasing the alien to kill all the other characters. Oh wait, no, she's fine. Sprinkler shoots her with water and now she's alive again. Now, there's a pretty scary moment where she evades the aliens for about 5 minutes, but then Andy lets her die and the alien totally eats her. Now, at this point, the main characters finally realize that Andy's prime directives have changed, and he states that he's now doing whatever will help the company, which again sucks. He randomly takes everyone to the science lab, where in a really satisfying moment, they retcon all the weird nonsense from Prometheus and bring back those weird alien evolution pudding jars from that movie. They introduce some new bullshit that if you eat the pudding, it will now let you regrow your limbs or something. And no, this isn't the third Prometheus movie I wanted, but I'm happy they didn't throw all the Prometheus ideas in the trash either, and I'm happy they're at least making an attempt to try and close off those plot holes. Anyway, then this brings back the random mutation concept from Prometheus, and it shows that if you eat the Prometheus pudding, you're eventually going to turn into some weird monster like that Mohawk guy from Prometheus, and I'm welcome that there's some continuity here. Anyway, then they notice the xenomorph is hunting them all, so Andy gives everyone some guns and they all go off to die. They find an alien-infected hallway and they manage to find Kate strung up like she's in a beehive or something, and Andy almost pulls a fast bender, recommending that they put the horrible alien mutagen pudding in her, but they don't do it and they save her, and the main character widely decides, fuck that, Andy's compromised. Meanwhile, Normal Boy gets killed by the xenomorphs, and it's revealed that now there's like 5 xenomorphs. Andy zogs out while Kate and the main character almost escape in an elevator, but then the main character has like a change of heart, and she gives Kate all the terrible pudding and decides that she has to save Andy because she loves Andy, even though his brain has been overridden by the cliche evil franchise android. Meanwhile, Kate is left alone and she decides that she's actually going to eat the Prometheus pudding, which is a horrible idea, but hey, it's fan service, so she does it. Main character meets up with Andy and removes his stupid British accent upgrade, but they're surrounded by 5 xenomorphs and they have to deal with that. Anyway, meanwhile, Rook makes his play to kill the main characters and help Kate escape so the company gets that delicious pudding. Main character turns off the gravity again and is surprisingly able to headshot almost all the xenomorphs with simple video game logic. Then afterwards, they leave behind this kind of magnificent zero-G acid storm that the main characters have to dodge through in extremely creative and interesting ways. So that was fun. Anyway, then they go to the elevator and the gravity turns back on, and weirdly the xenomorph goes out of its way to save the main character, I guess so he can eat her. But then they drop the elevator on the xenomorphs and Andy kills the last xenomorph with that awesome quote from Aliens, "Get away from her, you bitch," except he says it with an autism voice, and it's kind of funny. Anyway, then the station finally crash lands, and miraculously, Andy, main character, and Kate escape, except Kate is completely going to turn into one of those Prometheus starfish abominations and probably kill everybody. Now after that, the film finally hits its final act, and at this point, the film kind of drops the ball and stops being fully entertaining for me because it dives so hard into fan service that all the originality it had up to now is left at the door. Now, look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. All of a sudden, at the ending of this movie turns into a one-for-one carbon copy to the end of 1997's Alien Resurrection. So if you didn't see it, in Alien Resurrection, Ripley was a clone, and the Alien Queen was a clone, and the Queen Alien had been cloned, and she had Ripley's vajayjay, and she gave birth to this nasty alien-human hybrid. Now, in this movie, the Prometheus pudding infected Kate's baby and turned it into this, like, xeno-human thing. So it pops out of her, and initially the main character is, like, ready to throw it straight in the dumpster, but then she drops it or something, and then it super somehow fast turns in, like, 1 minute to a fully adult xeno-human thing. And it comes back and eats its mom, and it essentially looks like a cross between the Prometheus engineer and a xenomorph, and it also has a creepy starfish, like, opening between its legs. I don't want to get into it. Then in a full rerun of the Alien Resurrection ending, the main character defeats it just like an Alien Resurrection by sucking it through a crack in the wall made by the alien acid, and then she also dumps like a space truck on it just to like make sure it's dead. Then the movie ends with the exact same shot as the ending of the original Alien, with the main character going to sleep but leaving a "please find me later" log behind. So I liked that movie up until the final act where it became a rerun of Resurrection and the original, and it was just so much of a rerun that it like completely ruined it for me. Now, that being said, overall this movie didn't suck. Romulus was actually a lot better than I was expecting. If I had to rank it, it's the 5th best Alien movie. It's not as good as the first 3, and it's not as good as Prometheus, but it's way better than like Alien Resurrection, which it oddly enough rips off of, and it's way better than like the Alien vs. Predator movies, and it's way better than Covenant. I was pleasantly surprised by how many callbacks they did have to the first movies and Resurrection and Prometheus, and even though this movie wasn't Prometheus 3, which is what I really wanted, I did appreciate that they brought back the Prometheus pudding and the face of the engineer, and that was enough to give me a little bit of closure about what the fuck happened in that series, although I still want to know what happened to Fassbender and the engineers, and I kind of hope that they get into that in another movie. But yeah, I can at least contextualize from this new information in this movie that the engineers were a race of aliens who did perfect the pudding, and to make them powerful and gods, but ultimately who cares? Because that just brings up more questions about why this pudding matters and where the hell did this pudding come from. Romulus is otherwise a solid and decent sequel, and it's refreshing to see it after the Ridley Scott Prometheus movies were so half-baked. I would say this movie is fully baked, which is a step up from Covenant. It's just unfortunately not as original as I fully would have liked. I think it would have been a lot better if just Andy had been completely a good guy all the way through, and he had been compromised with like the stereotypical android programming, especially since you did have Rook in there to be the stereotypical programmed android. The movie especially falls apart with the last scene where it just gets too indulgent in fan service for its own good, to the point where it suddenly has become a one-for-one reenactment of Alien Resurrection. And I'm like, what the fuck was that? I didn't like Alien Resurrection, so I'm like not nostalgic for it, and I don't know why the fuck they would rip off the ending of that, but that's what they did. Like, did the scriptwriters just give up at that point? Anyway, like I said, it's better than Covenant, but it's still not perfect, and I think like they could have made it just a little bit better if it wasn't so fucking like derivative of Resurrection in the ending, and if Andy had just done his own thing and not been compromised. Otherwise, like, if I'm being real, I will generously give this movie a 7 out of 10 just for the fact it does get the franchise back on its legs, and it does give us a chance that we might eventually actually see Prometheus 3, because they're trying to keep the Prometheus plot elements spinning, and I appreciate that. Especially because the Prometheus elements do cause a little bit of unexpected chaos, and that was fun. Alright, I was being Buster Green, and let me know if you guys are into the Aliens franchise. If you guys are into the Alien franchise, I think I have one more video in me about something else that I'll tell you in the next video. Alright, night everybody. Later.